speaker is Wilf Steimle from the Electric Vehicle Society. So I know we're starting a little bit late, so I'm going to just kind of hopefully you noticed as you walked in, there's a number of electric vehicles up front. Hopefully you had a chance to look at them, and if not, maybe get a test drive after the presentation. But Wilf's here to give us a little background on the ABCs, I guess, if you will, of electric vehicles and everything you might want to know and need to know, and where they're going in the future here. So with that, I'll turn it over to Wilf, and
thanks, Larry.
Feel free to ask any questions.
Thank you. So I'm Wilf, and I'm here, I guess, on behalf of two organizations today. One is the Electric Vehicle Society in Ontario, and we're an owners group. We meet in Scarborough once a month, both owners and people that are interested in looking at electric vehicles as kind of support group where you learn more before you buy something and have support afterwards. We do a lot of outreach and public education. I'm also here on behalf of Plug and Drive, the people that put out a little booklet that I just handed out. Plug and Drive is also a not-for-profit education organization. We're doing test drives out front on electric vehicles that you can actually drive around the block and experience with that. So because it's such a small room, I'm kind of curious what's brought you into the room, what your interest is, the growth of your room.
I'm interested in electric vehicles. I think the next car I get is electrical. So I'm actually learning to buy one right now. Just learning about it.
Right, that's great. And same thing. You're just here because you have to be here. I get that. And Natasha, you're environmentally conscious. What's your driving force?
I like the puns. My driving course. Well, yes, I'm definitely into the environment and things I can do to lessen my impact, but also I am interested in having my next car be an electric car.
Great. Larry, are you?
Yeah, same thing. Considering next vehicle is an electric vehicle, and I guess I drive longer distances, so I always wonder
how do
I do that in an electric vehicle.
Great segue to what I'm about to talk about. So the first point is there's over 18 production electric cars on the market right now. The booklet that you have lists all the electric cars that are on the market in Ontario. And these are cars you can walk into a Ford dealer and say, I want that car, and drive away with the car. Limited supply, so you may have to choose which dealer you go to. But whether it's Ford or GM or Nissan, these are production cars that are in stock. It's not some esoteric thing anymore. There's three categories of cars, two categories of cars in that booklet, but three I'll just mention very quickly. So we're all used to hearing the term hybrid. And hybrid is a type of vehicle that uses gas and uses electric batteries to fill in the spot where gas is really horribly inefficient. So it just kind of deals with that stop and traffic light situation, things like that, where you don't need to idle. But at the end of the day, a hybrid still is only fuel source is gasoline. So it's still a gas car, it just happens to be a little more efficient. There's another type of hybrid that's called a plug-in hybrid, so a PHEV, plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, and there's a whole section of the booklet on those. So it's the same kind of technology as a hybrid, but the batteries are bigger, and it's got a plug that you can plug into the wall. So you can come home at night, plug it in, charge the batteries from a clean energy source like electricity, and our mix in Ontario is very clean. We have very little carbon emission in Ontario at this point. And drive off, and your first part of your drive, depending on the model, whether there's some that are 80 kilometers, some that are 30, some that are 200. That first section is pure electric with no emissions. And then on the plug-in hybrid, there's a gas backup that kicks in and keeps you going further. So Larry, your example of, I need to drive long distances. Plug-in hybrids are a pretty good fit for a lot of people today. Where they say, my day-to-day commute is 40 kilometers. But once in a while, I want to go to the cottage. So take something like the Chevrolet Bolt. It has an 80-kilometer range. It's more than enough when you leave charge out of your garage every morning to do what you do almost every day. And on the weekend, you hop in that same car, you head north, your first 80 kilometers is electric, the gas backup kicks in, and you just keep on going as long as there's gas in the tank. So those are plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, PHEVs. And then the last category of electrics, which is in that book as well, are pure electric cars. They're called BEVs, battery electric vehicles. So cars like the Nissan Leaf, the Chevrolet Bolt, Ford Focus Electric, that have ranges anywhere from about 150 kilometers to 400 kilometers of pure electric. So there's no gas backup, no emissions, and no maintenance. And we'll get to that in the slides here. And it's about these are not toys for the rich like the media will have you believe. Prices on a lot of these cars start at $20,000. So Ford Focus Electric, in its base trim is about $19,000 after the government rebate. In its deluxe trim with leather seats and Sony stereo is $24,000. So they're very viable, with cars that are within reach of a lot of people. People often think of an electric car as a glorified golf cart, this slow thing, and they're going to make all kinds of compromises. In reality is it's actually quite the opposite. And I'm hoping to get time today to go outside and give one of the electric cars a ride. I use this as an example of two cars from the same manufacturer, an electric car, the Chevrolet Volt, and a car that's about the same size and actually looks almost identical, the Chevrolet Cruze. The Volt's almost a second faster than the gasoline car. So electric cars are all much faster than gas cars. When you look at range, this is a number that always interests me, and that comes from Stats Canada, is the average Canadian drives 44 kilometers a day. And when I talk to people about electric cars that have a range of 200 kilometers, they say, oh, that couldn't possibly be enough range for me. I said, well, what do you do every day? Well, I go to work, do I come back, and I get some groceries? Well, that's kind of that number, which is this average commute. So even the lowest range electric car on the market is more than enough to meet your daily needs. And we have cars that are up around 500 kilometers of range. These are pure electric. Sped up version of this, so we're going to get kicked out of here in 15 minutes. So another concern that I'm often asked about is, our electricity is really expensive. And the interesting answer is it's actually not. If you look at the price of electricity in major centers across North America, we are just slightly below average. So in Canada, we're a little bit high. We're one of the higher provinces. And there's a few reasons for that. But when you look at it on a North American scale, our electrical rates are neither cheap nor expensive. We're right in the middle. And at the end of the day, with our rates, this is really the interesting number is the cost to charge an electric vehicle to get 100 kilometers of range is about $2. That compares, when you look at maintenance costs and fuel costs on mid-size sedan, you're $14 or $15 to drive 100 kilometers. Consider your oil changes and your tune-ups and all the other things you have to do to a gas car that you don't to an electric. An electric is $2 of electricity, and that's about it for your maintenance. On top of that, we do have a program in this area starting later this year. If you own an electric car, 4 years of fuel are free. So your overnight charging for the next 4 years is free. In terms of maintenance, when we go back to that $2 versus the $14 or $15 that it costs to operate a gasoline car, the gasoline engine is actually a pretty complex piece of equipment, thousands of moving parts. And as you all know, because you've driven gasoline cars for years, you take it in and there's always something that needs to be done, whether it's a new timing belt or a water pump or this or that, and you come up with your bill for, so as far as servicing, $1,500, because we had to do all this maintenance to this complex thing that's under the hood that's moving your car. In comparison, an electric motor has one moving part. There is no maintenance, and they essentially last forever.
Can I ask about brakes?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. So,
I actually don't know.
we
We haven't had to deal with brakes yet. We haven't
I thought you were not going to help me out there. It's a really good point. So the other interesting thing with electric cars is they have something called regen braking. So if you take your foot off the accelerator, it recaptures that energy that you use to get the car moving and charges the battery. And it basically increases the charge of the battery. And as it's doing that, slowing the car down fairly aggressively. So the further you take your foot off the accelerator, the quicker you slow down. You actually don't end up using the brake pedal very much. You use it for the last 2-3 feet when you come up to the stop sign, just to halt that and stop the motion completely. Or if there's an emergency, a kid runs out in front of you, you use the brake pedal. But other than that, The mechanical brakes on electric car are used very little because so much of it is done through regen. So typically you will buy an electric car and you will never have to do a brake job on it. You do some slight maintenance every couple of years. You should be lubricating the sliders because the brakes aren't used a lot. They can seize.
And they're the same as like other car brakes.
They're
That's
standard
what I-
hydraulic brakes.
Mhm.
Yeah. But they really are used
Yeah.
almost not at all, so they last essentially forever.
And wait, do you mean the brakes like give a small charge to the car?
No.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's actually the electric drive motor. The smarts in the car say as you take your foot off the accelerator, the smarts tell this thing to turn around and become a generator and use that motion to generate electricity and pump it back in the battery. So that, and just the action of that generator doing work causes the car to slow down.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, so it's really like, the most notable one is the Chevrolet Bolt, which has just come out. It's a $29,000 car with almost 400 kilometers of range, pure electric, and Chevrolet's actively marketing it as one-pedal driving. You really can, because its regenerative braking is so good that you really can just drive with that right pedal unless there's an emergency. Battery life's another common question that I get asked, and our reference is these things, where we're used to, 3 years later, oh gosh, I'm going to buy a new battery. These are $15 batteries. They're meant to just do as much as they can do and then die, and you buy another $15 battery. But what if? We all have this what if and want the car to be, one car to fill every possible need. It should be a sports car and a pickup truck and this, like, we want something that does everything. And we need to kind of step back from that and look at this and say, what can I do with it? And what is going to do for the environment when I drive an electric car? What's it going to do for my pocketbook when I drive an electric car? And you know what, if it's really too inconvenient to do that trip in 3 years to PEI, I'll rent a gas car to go to PEI, and that's okay. Because I've done enough good, saved enough money, that I'm still way ahead to just once in a while rent a specialty vehicle, or if I need to pick up some drywall, I'll rent a pickup truck, pick up my drywall, return the pickup truck, and go back and drive my car. So I did actually wake up one morning and decide that I wanted to do a bit of a trip last summer. And I got in my car and drove to the West Coast and drove up the West Coast to Vancouver and drove back across Canada. And did it kind of as a bit of a leisurely trip. I was gone for 5 or 6 weeks. Visited friends along the way. It was about, in the end, it was actually 14,000 kilometers. So I got back to Toronto, did a little laundry, went into Montreal to visit some people and came back. And I did all of that on $3 of electricity. And that was actually just mindless planning in Seattle, Washington. I had some friends that I wanted to visit, and I didn't expect to do as much driving in the city of Seattle as I did. And I stopped at a Nissan dealer to charge my car at the Nissan dealer. I gave him $3 while I had my cup of coffee.
Huh.
The rest of the trip is all chargers along the way that are available for free. Another example, I drive to Montreal fairly frequently. It's about a 700 kilometer trip. I'll stop in Port Hope, I'll stop in Kingston, and I'll stop in Cornwall. And it's about 2 hours to get to there. By that time, I finish my coffee and my bladder wants me to visit the washroom. And the same thing happens with the second cup of coffee around here, the third cup of coffee around there. So from Barrie to Montreal, I stopped 3 times for about 12 minutes each to stretch my legs and go to the bathroom. I could not do that trip any faster in a gas car. I've done it many times in a gas car, and I usually get somewhere around here and just really kind of be zonked and have to stop for 30, 40 minutes and have something to eat and go on. At the end of the day, I've stopped just as much. I've probably done it more safely this way by having more frequent stops and just having the short charges that give me more than enough to get to the next place I'm going to stop.
So how long did you say that took you?
Which,
That trip right there?
this is Montreal?
Yeah.
Well, Montreal trip, it's about 700 kilometers, so I'm on the road for 7 hours and change. So I'm coming from there.
Which is pretty good, because I drive from Newmarket to Montreal, and it takes me 6.
Yeah.
So, it's
Yeah.
not-
So I'm a little further north.
Yeah, so it's not really that big of a difference.
No, it's not at all. It really is that our charging infrastructure, which I'll touch on very briefly, is so good now that there's fast chargers in so many places, and we're building a lot more in Ontario. That for the most part, you just point to where you want to go and you go. If it's like that trip I did up across northern Ontario, north of Superior and through the prairies, that took a little bit of planning because charging is a little skinny in there. So I did actually map out, okay, what are my choices? And if this one's, I'm down for some reason, what's my plan B? So I planned that one a little bit more, but down here to the States, it's already so dense that you go and your car tells you when to stop. So, here, this is some push pins of chargers in Ontario, and they're actually not all the chargers in Ontario. They're just the new ones we're building this year. Layered behind this, you don't see on this map, are 5 or 6 times as many that are already in place. So this is a government initiative that's happening right now, really to make electric transport in this province as convenient and easy as gasoline transport. By the end of this year, I can take a $20,000 car like an Assembly and get to almost anywhere in Ontario with no problem. There's going to be a few spots way up north where I'll be using campgrounds to charge because there's just no public chargers yet, but it's coming. So there we go. There's a quick overview. Really kind of interested in questions of us. Yeah.
To produce the electricity takes power, and it uses a certain level of pollution that goes with that. And has anyone done a study as to how much pollution goes into fueling an electric car for Ontario versus buying a gas?
Absolutely, yeah. So I'll actually take this back a step and take you to, say, South Carolina or Tennessee or somewhere down there where almost all the fuel electricity production is coal, which is about as bad as it gets for CO2 emissions, greenhouse gases. And even in those horrible, horrible states, driving an electric car still produces less CO2 than driving gasoline. And the really interesting thing in those states is as the fleets become electric, and one by one the coal stations are being shut down, each time the coal station gets shut down and gets replaced with a renewable, the entire fleet gets cleaner. So you own an electric in Tennessee, which is doing slightly better than the gas car in terms of environmental friendliness. One station gets replaced, your car just got cleaner. So even in the worst of the worst scenarios, electrics are still better. In Ontario, our energy mix is almost zero carbon. The only time we emit carbon here is when gas peaker plants start. So in the summer, around 5 o'clock, you get home, you turn the air conditioning down, you start cooking, the pool pump is going, and we just reach these horrible peak demands on our electric grid, and we have gas-fired generators that can start up in very short notice, get us past that few-hour peak, and then they shut down. That's the only time we burn any carbon in our fuel mix in Ontario. So we are about as clean as it gets. And when we look at our electricity pricing in this province, there's a lot of reasons it is higher than, say, Quebec and some of the other provinces. If we take Quebec, they've got a wonderful mix of hydro generation, just much more than we have. So they get really nice, cheap electricity in that sense. And we move out to the prairies. Well, they're burning coal, so they're getting it kind of cheap, but the price they're paying is our health, right? So we can, we've got this really nice mix where we've got clean energy and not too expensive, not the cheapest, but the benefits to our health are fantastic. So,
mostly nuclear in Ontario?
We have a lot of nuclear in Ontario, yeah, for sure. And interestingly, while it's certainly clean in terms of carbon emissions, there are none. It is one of the biggest reasons that our electricity in Ontario is as expensive as it is. Solar and the wind piece, which the newspapers really like to cite as, oh my God, we're spending all this money and that's why our bills are going through the roof. The reality is that only accounts for 16% of the line item that says electricity. It has nothing to do with the delivery charges, like all those other line items on your bill aren't affected by that. The electricity cost of generation, the solar and the green initiatives we're doing only amount for 16% of that increase. The rest of the increase is building and maintaining nuclear plants. Nuclear is actually very expensive fuel. Larry?
Just a question, as a homeowner, so you get an electric vehicle or a plug-in hybrid, any special requirements? Do you need like a 240 service, or is it just an extension cord to a regular outlet, or how does that work?
You can do both. So all of these cars come with a standard cord that you can plug into the wall, and that will add on most of these cars 70 or 80 kilometers of range overnight while you sleep. So if you're driving less than 70 or 80K, you don't need to do anything. You just plug it into the wall in the socket you've already got in your garage. Most people will buy a charging station for their garage, which is a 240 volt instead of 120 volt station. It'll charge most cars from empty to full in about 3 hours. In addition to the $14,000 incentive that we get in Ontario to fund the electric car purchase, we also get up to $1,000 back to put that charger in our garage. So the cost to do that is actually very low, and we're changing our building code right now to require basically a stove outlet in every garage and every new construction that's ready just to plug one of those chargers in.
And how much does that generally cost to actually install that?
A home charger is about $800. The cost for the electrician, could be anywhere from $200 or $300 to maybe $1,000. But keep in mind, you get $1,000 back.
So you're looking at like 500 bucks.
$500, $600.
That's not bad when you think about how much fuel is spent.
Can I have a question?
Yes.
Can we talk about weather in electric cars? Because typically, water and electricity do not go together. So having an electric car, and for me personally, I don't have a garage, the car will be outside 24/7.
I love that question.
So,
Larry's giving me the evil eye. Do you have to line up outside or should
No,
we
not yet,
go?
but answer the question, and any more questions, we'll take them outside, I guess.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. So the plug that plugs in actually has no power on it until it's mated with your car. So I can take that plug from that charging station and drop it in a puddle of water and stick my hand in there. It's not energized at all. So it's only once the plug is in the car and the charging station have this little talk back and forth, are you in all the way? Are you good? Are you good? And once everybody's happy, then the charging station goes, all right, I'm going to turn on the power because I'm fully mated and there's no way of touching me.
and the car itself with the weather?
There's some really great pictures of some electrics sort of up to the doors going through flooded underpasses.
Okay.
There's absolutely no issue.
Okay.
There is zero safety.
And with typical Ontario road conditions, with the salt and the sleet and all that stuff under the car, you don't have issues with rusting, you don't have anything like that?
No, so that is completely sealed. So there's no issue with that at all. Larry,
Thank you, Will.
all right.
And thank you
If
for...
I can,
Yes.
if I'll be outside on the test drive, please come out and give it a try, and I'll be happy to just keep answering questions out there. I think they need the room back, so
Yeah.
give them their room back.
Thank you, Will.